Tamerlane, the conqueror who forged the last great nomadic empire. Part 1. Central Asia before Timur. In the middle decades of the 14th century, Central Asia stood fragmented and leaderless. The once mighty Mongol Empire, forged by Genghis Khan little more than a century earlier, had splintered into rival khanates locked in endless cycles of warfare and succession disputes. The dream of a unified steppe empire stretching from China to Eastern Europe had dissolved into political chaos. The Chagatai Khanate, named after Genghis Khan's second son, controlled the heartland of Central Asia, including the vital region of Transoxiana, the fertile land between the Amu Darya and Sur Darya rivers. By the 1330s, even this fragment of Mongol power had crumbled into competing territories ruled by ambitious chieftains who invoked the prestige of Genghis Khan, while lacking the strength to restore his legacy. The Khans themselves had become ceremonial figures, puppets elevated and deposed by powerful tribal leaders known as emirs. This political vacuum created opportunity. The cities of the Silk Road, especially the magnificent Samarkand, remained centers of enormous wealth despite the instability. Caravans still moved precious goods between China and the Mediterranean, and whoever controlled these cities controlled not merely territory but the flow of commerce itself. Yet no single leader possessed the vision or military genius to reunite the fractured lands. The society of 14th-century Central Asia blended the nomadic traditions of the Mongol steppe with the sophisticated urban culture of Persian Islam. The ruling military elite remained predominantly Turkic and Mongol, maintaining the cavalry warfare and tribal organization that had enabled Genghis Khan's conquests. Beneath this warrior aristocracy flourished a Persian-speaking administrative and cultural class that governed cities, collected taxes, and preserved the literary and architectural achievements of Islamic civilization. Into this world of collapsing authority and competing warlords, a minor noble was born who would transform the entire region and leave a mark on world history as profound as it was blood-soaked. The stage was set for the rise of Timur. Sources used: The Rise and Rule of Tamerlane by Beatrice Forbes Mance, pages 128. The Mongols and the Islamic World by Peter Jackson, pages 312–340. The Cambridge History of Iran, Volume 6, pages 42–79. Part 2. The Rise of Timur. Timur was born around 1336 in the town of Kesh, south of Samarkand, in what is now Uzbekistan. He came from the Barlas tribe, a Mongol group that had settled in Transoxiana and adopted Turkish language and culture. His father, Taraghai, held a minor position within the tribal hierarchy, making Timur part of the nobility but far from the centers of real power. Later court chronicles would embellish his ancestry, claiming descent from Genghis Khan, but modern historians have conclusively demonstrated these genealogies were invented after Timur achieved power to legitimize his rule. The young Timur grew up during a period of extreme instability. The Chagatai Khanate had effectively split between a settled western portion centered on Transoxiana and an eastern, nomadic region. Local emirs fought constantly for control of cities and pastures. Timur's early career followed the pattern of countless minor nobles of his era. He gathered followers, formed alliances, switched sides when advantageous, and slowly built a personal military force loyal to him rather than to any Khan or emir. At some point during these early military adventures, probably in the late 1350s or early 1360s, Timur suffered severe injuries to his right leg and right arm, possibly from arrows during a skirmish. The wounds left him with a permanent limp and limited use of his right hand. This injury gave him the name by which he became known to enemies and Europeans, Timurai Lang, meaning Timur the Lame, which became Tamerlane in Western sources. The exact circumstances of this injury remain unclear, with various chronicles offering different accounts, but the physical evidence from his exhumed remains in 1941 confirmed the severity of these old wounds. Despite his disability, Timur proved himself an exceptional military leader. He forged a crucial partnership with Emir Hussein, grandson of a prominent emir, and together they campaigned to control Transoxiana. The alliance succeeded in capturing key cities, but by the late 1360s, the relationship deteriorated into rivalry. Timur understood that Central Asian politics demanded both military strength and perceived legitimacy. He married Saray Mulk Khanum, a descendant of Genghis Khan, which gave him a connection, however indirect, to the Mongol imperial bloodline. He also cultivated support among tribal leaders by distributing plunder generously and demonstrating consistent military success. The decisive break with Hussein came in 1370. After a series of military confrontations, Timur besieged Hussein in Balkh. When the city fell, Hussein was executed, and Timur emerged as the undisputed master of Transoxiana. Rather than claiming the title of Khan, which his non-Jenghisid ancestry made politically impossible, Timur adopted the title of Emir and ruled through puppet Khans descended from Genghis Khan. This careful attention to legitimacy would characterize his entire reign. Timur made Samarkand his capital and immediately began transforming it into the grandest city in Central Asia. But consolidating power in Transoxiana was merely the beginning. At 34 years old, Timur controlled a wealthy but relatively small territory surrounded by rivals. What followed would be 3 decades of nearly continuous military campaigning that would make him the most feared conqueror of his age. Sources used: Timur by Beatrice Forbes Mance, pages 934. Tamerlane. Sword of Islam, Conqueror of the World by Justin Marazi, pages 47-89. Sharaf ad-Din Ali Yazdi, Zafarnama, as cited in The Rise and Rule of Tamerlane by Beatrice Forbes Mance, pages 29-45. Part 3. Building a vast empire between 1370 and 1395, Timur transformed his regional power base into a vast empire stretching from the borders of China to Anatolia. His campaigns during this period established patterns of warfare and conquest that would define his entire career. Meticulous planning, overwhelming cavalry strikes, strategic use of terror, and relentless pursuit of enemies who dared resist. His first major campaigns targeted the regions immediately surrounding Transoxiana. Between 1372 and 1375, Timur conducted multiple expeditions into Khwarezm, the region south of the Aral Sea, bringing it under his control. These early campaigns served both strategic and economic purposes, eliminating potential rivals while securing the northern trade routes. Timur then turned south and east, campaigning in Afghanistan and asserting dominance over the eastern territories that had once belonged to the Chagatai Khanate. By the early 1380s, Timur began his conquest of Persia, a series of campaigns that would continue intermittently for years. The Persian lands were divided among multiple dynasties and local rulers. Timur's invasions followed a calculated pattern. His armies would sweep through a region, compel submission through overwhelming force or destructive sieges, install governors, and then withdraw. Rebellions inevitably followed, providing Timur with justification for even harsher subsequent campaigns. The wealthy cities of Herat, Isfahan, and Shiraz all experienced the cycle of submission, rebellion, and savage retribution. Contemporary chronicles, both those sympathetic to Timur and those written by his enemies, describe the systematic destruction that accompanied his conquests. When cities resisted, the consequences were catastrophic. After Isfahan rebelled in 1387 despite having previously submitted, Timur's forces reportedly massacred tens of thousands of inhabitants and constructed towers from their skulls. Modern historians debate the exact casualty figures recorded in medieval sources, recognizing that numbers were often exaggerated by both sides. But there is no doubt that Timur deliberately employed mass killings and destruction as instruments of policy, intended to terrify other cities into immediate surrender. Timur's military success rested on several foundations. His army combined the traditional Mongol cavalry tactics of mobility, archery, and encirclement with disciplined organization and sophisticated siege technology. He maintained an extensive intelligence network that gathered information about enemy forces, political divisions, and terrain. His campaigns were supplied through a combination of logistical planning and systematic looting. Perhaps most importantly, Timur proved himself a master of psychological warfare, ensuring that stories of destroyed cities and massacred populations spread ahead of his armies, encouraging surrender rather than resistance. One of Timur's most significant conflicts during this period was with Toktamish, Khan of the Golden Horde. Toktamish had initially received Timur's support in gaining power, but once established, he proved an aggressive and expansionist ruler. In 1385 and again in 1388, Toktamish invaded Timur's territories. Timur responded with devastating campaigns deep into the Golden Horde's territory in 1391 and 1395. The second expedition culminated in the Battle of the Terek River, where Timur decisively defeated Toktamish. Following this victory, Timur's forces ravaged the cities of the Golden Horde, including the destruction of Sarai, the capital. These campaigns permanently weakened the Golden Horde and shifted the balance of power in the Eurasian steppe. Timur also campaigned in the Caucasus, conquering Georgia multiple times and devastating Armenia. By 1395, at nearly 60 years old, he controlled an empire that rivaled the domains once held by the unified Mongol Khans. Yet Timur showed no signs of satisfaction. His ambitions extended further still, toward the wealthy lands of India and the powerful states of the Near East. Sources used: The Rise and Rule of Tamerlane by Beatrice Forbes Mance, pages 46-89, 125-167, The Mongols and the Islamic World by Peter Jackson, pages 341-379, Tamerlane. Sword of Islam, Conqueror of the World by Justin Marazi, pages 112-3, Part 4. The Conqueror of Delhi and Damascus in 1398, Timur turned his attention toward the Delhi Sultanate, the Muslim power controlling northern India. The stated justification for the invasion combined religious and political elements. Timur claimed that the sultans of Delhi were too tolerant of their Hindu subjects and that the border regions had fallen into disorder. Modern historians recognize these reasons as the standard pretext of conquest, masking Timur's primary motivations of plunder and glory. The invasion of India demonstrated Timur's capacity for logistical planning on an enormous scale. His army crossed the challenging terrain of the Hindu Kush Mountains and advanced systematically through the Punjab, subduing resistance and accumulating vast amounts of plunder. In December 1398, Timur's forces met the army of Sultan Mahmud Tughlaq outside Delhi. The Sultan fielded a substantial force including war elephants, which initially disrupted Timur's cavalry. However, Timur adapted his tactics, using incendiary devices and concentrated archery to panic the elephants, which then stampeded through their own lines. The Delhi army broke, and the city lay defenseless. What followed was one of the darkest episodes of Timur's career. Despite assurances of safety, Delhi was thoroughly sacked. Contemporary sources, including accounts commissioned by Timur himself, describe widespread massacre, enslavement, and destruction. The skilled artisans were separated from the general population and sent to Samarkand to beautify Timur's capital. The chronicler Ibn Arabshah, who witnessed the aftermath, described the devastation in horrific detail. Modern historians examining multiple sources generally conclude that while medieval accounts likely exaggerated specific numbers, the destruction of Delhi was systematic and catastrophic. Timur did not attempt to permanently occupy India. After extracting enormous wealth and thousands of prisoners, including craftsmen, scholars, and elephants for his army, he withdrew across the mountains in early 1399. The Delhi Sultanate survived but was profoundly weakened, and northern India descended into decades of instability. From India, Timur turned westward toward the prosperous lands of Syria and Mesopotamia, regions that were part of the Mamluk Sultanate based in Egypt. In 1400, he invaded Syria with characteristic speed and force. Aleppo fell after a siege and was comprehensively sacked. When Damascus surrendered in early 1401, Timur initially offered terms, but following disorder in the city, he ordered its destruction. The Great Umayyad Mosque was damaged, and much of the city was burned. Thousands of artisans and scholars were deported to Samarkand, following the pattern established in Delhi. The Mamluk Sultan in Cairo could not effectively respond to these invasions due to internal political challenges and the speed of Timur's campaigns. By the time Mamluk forces could mobilize, Timur had already moved on. His conquest of Damascus represented the high point of his expansion into the Near East and brought him into direct confrontation with another rising power, the Ottoman Empire. These campaigns in India and Syria demonstrated both the extent of Timur's military genius and the human cost of his ambition. He had defeated two of the major Islamic powers of his era, accumulated unimaginable wealth, and transformed Samarkand into a city adorned with the plunder and talent of a dozen conquered lands. Yet the violence of his conquests left a legacy of destruction that persisted for generations. Modern scholarship struggles to reconcile Timur's genuine achievements in art, architecture, and statecraft with the systematic brutality that funded and characterized his reign. Sources used: Timur by Beatrice Forbes Mance, pages 90-112. Ibn Arabsha, Ajib al-Maktur fi Nawib Timur, as translated and cited in Tamerlane. Sword of Islam, Conqueror of the World by Justin Marazi, pages 204-267. The Cambridge History of Iran, Volume 6, pages 81-24. Part 5. Victory over the Ottoman Empire by 1400. The Ottoman Empire under Sultan Bayezid I had emerged as the dominant power in Anatolia and the Balkans. Bayezid, known as Yildirim or the Thunderbolt for the speed of his military campaigns, had expanded Ottoman territory dramatically. He had defeated a Crusader army at Nicopolis in 1396 and laid siege to Constantinople itself. The Ottomans appeared poised to become the preeminent Islamic power in the western regions. Conflict between Timur and Bayezid became inevitable as their spheres of influence collided in Anatolia. The immediate cause involved rival Turkmen princes and emirs in eastern Anatolia who appealed to both rulers for support. Bayezid had been consolidating control over these territories, but Timur viewed Anatolia as within his sphere and resented Ottoman expansion. Diplomatic exchanges between the two rulers grew increasingly hostile, with each demanding submission from the other. In 1400, Timur invaded Anatolia, capturing the important city of Sivas and executing its garrison. This direct challenge could not go unanswered. Bayezid, committed to his siege of Constantinople, initially tried to avoid full confrontation, but by 1402 both rulers were preparing for a decisive battle. European powers, terrified of Ottoman expansion, watched with great interest, and some Christian states even provided tacit support to Timur, seeing him as the lesser threat. The armies met near Ankara on July 20, 1402. Both sides fielded substantial forces, with estimates in contemporary sources varying wildly from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of combatants. Modern historians, analyzing the logistical possibilities and comparing multiple sources, generally estimate that each army numbered between 80,000 and 140,000 men, making this one of the largest battles of the medieval period. Timur demonstrated his strategic acumen before the battle even began. He secured the water sources around Ankara, forcing the Ottoman army to fight while suffering from thirst. During the battle itself, crucial contingents of Bayezid's army, particularly Turkmen cavalry from Anatolia who had previously been independent before Ottoman conquest, defected to Timur's side. The loyalty that Bayezid had imposed through recent conquest proved fragile when confronted with Timur's reputation and diplomatic outreach. The battle became a rout. The Ottoman army disintegrated, and Bayezid himself was captured while attempting to flee. The capture of an Ottoman sultan by Timur became one of the most famous events of the medieval period, spawning numerous legends. Later European sources claimed that Timur kept Bayezid in an iron cage and humiliated him cruelly before his death. Contemporary sources closer to the events, including accounts from Timur's court, indicate that Bayezid was treated with the respect due to a captured king, but was kept under close guard. He died in captivity in March 1403, possibly by suicide, though the exact circumstances remain disputed among historians. The political consequences of Ankara were profound. The Ottoman Empire descended into a civil war among Bayezid's sons that lasted more than a decade, a period known as the Ottoman Interregnum. Constantinople received an unexpected reprieve that prolonged the Byzantine Empire's existence by another half-century. Timur's victory re-established his claim to be the preeminent ruler of the Islamic world and the legitimate heir to Genghis Khan's legacy. Yet Timur did not attempt to permanently occupy Ottoman territories. After receiving submission from Bayezid's sons and various Anatolian princes, he withdrew eastward in 1403, returning to Samarkand. The Battle of Ankara represented the culmination of his conquests in the west and demonstrated that, even at nearly 70 years of age, Timur remained the most formidable military commander of his era. Sources used: The Rise and Rule of Tamerlane by Beatrice Forbes Mance, pages 113–124. Tamerlane, Sword of Islam, Conqueror of the World by Justin Marazi, pages 268–311. The Cambridge History of Iran, Volume 6, pages 125–151. Part 6, Death, Legacy, and the Timurid Renaissance. Even after his triumph over the Ottoman Empire, Timur's ambitions remained unsatisfied. By late 1404, he was planning his most audacious campaign yet: the invasion of Ming China. The Ming dynasty had replaced the Mongol Yuan dynasty in China in 1368, and Timur viewed their rule as illegitimate. A campaign against China would be the ultimate assertion of his claim to be the restorer of Genghis Khan's empire. In December 1404, despite the harsh winter, Timur began the march eastward from Samarkand at the head of a massive army. He was 68 years old, an extraordinary age for the period, and had spent most of his life on campaign. The winter conditions proved too severe even for his hardened forces. In February 1405, at Otrar on the Sirdaria River, Timur fell seriously ill. On February 17 or 18, 1405, he died, probably from pneumonia or related complications. Timur's body was returned to Samarkand and interred in the Guri Amir, a magnificent mausoleum that still stands today. According to tradition, a curse was inscribed on his tomb warning that whoever disturbed his remains would unleash war upon the world. When Soviet archaeologists opened the tomb in June 1941, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union days later, giving rise to modern legends about the curse. Scientific examination of his skeleton confirmed the leg and arm injuries described in historical sources and provided valuable information about his physical condition. The succession following Timur's death did not proceed smoothly. His empire had been held together primarily by his personal military genius and authority. While he had designated his grandson Pir Muhammad as his successor, other relatives contested the succession. After several years of conflict, Timur's youngest son Shah Rukh emerged as the dominant ruler, establishing his capital at Herat rather than Samarkand. Shah Rukh and his successors, while unable to maintain the full extent of Timur's conquests, presided over what historians call the Timurid Renaissance. The wealth extracted from Timur's campaigns and the skilled artisans forcibly relocated to Samarkand, and Herat produced an extraordinary flowering of Persian Islamic culture. Architecture, miniature painting, astronomy, mathematics, and literature all flourished under Timurid patronage. Shah Rukh's son Ulugh Beg, who governed Samarkand, became one of the greatest astronomers of the medieval period. His observatory in Samarkand produced astronomical tables of remarkable accuracy. Timurid architecture, exemplified by the Registan complex in Samarkand and the mosques of Herat, achieved heights of beauty that influenced Islamic architecture for centuries. The Timurid court fostered Persian literary culture, supporting poets, historians, and scholars whose works remain classics of Persian literature. The Timurid dynasty gradually weakened through the 15th century, losing territory to rival powers including the Uzbek tribes from the north and the rising Safavid dynasty in Persia. By the early 16th century, Timurid power had fragmented. However, the dynasty's final legacy would prove remarkably enduring. Babur, a descendant of Timur through his father and of Genghis Khan through his mother, was driven from his Central Asian territories by Uzbek conquest. He moved south into Afghanistan and then India, where in 1526 he established the Mughal Empire. The Mongols, who ruled much of the Indian subcontinent until the 18th century, consciously identified themselves as Timurids and preserved many aspects of Timurid culture and statecraft. Modern historical assessment of Timur remains deeply divided. He was unquestionably one of history's most successful military commanders, never losing a major battle during his 35-year career of almost continuous warfare. His conquests exceeded in geographical scope those of any conqueror between Genghis Khan and the colonial empires of the modern era. The cultural renaissance sponsored by his dynasty produced works of lasting beauty and scientific achievement. Yet this legacy is inseparable from immense human destruction. Conservative estimates suggest that Timur's campaigns resulted in the deaths of millions of people through direct violence, enslavement, destruction of agricultural systems, and resulting famines and epidemics. Entire cities were razed, ancient irrigation systems destroyed, and regional populations devastated. The demographic impact on regions like Persia, Iraq, and parts of India persisted for generations. Unlike Genghis Khan, who created lasting administrative and legal systems, or Alexander the Great, whose conquests spread Hellenistic culture, Timur's empire was fundamentally extractive and personal. It existed to serve his ambition and glorify his capital. When he died, the empire's cohesion died with him, though the cultural achievements his plunder funded survived. In Central Asian nations today, particularly Uzbekistan, Timur is celebrated as a national hero and symbol of cultural achievement. Monuments and cities bear his name, and his image appears on currency. This modern nationalism often downplays or ignores the destruction his campaigns caused beyond Central Asia. In contrast, in Iran, Iraq, and India, historical memory often emphasizes the devastation his invasions brought. Timur represents one of history's great paradoxes, a conqueror of extraordinary genius whose military achievements facilitated cultural flowering, yet whose path to that achievement was paved with systematic destruction and mass death. He remains, more than 6 centuries after his death, a figure impossible to ignore in any account of medieval history, Islamic civilization, or the complex legacy of the Mongol successor states. His life demonstrates both the heights of individual ambition and capability, and the terrible human cost such ambition exacts when pursued through violence and conquest. Sources used: The Rise and Rule of Tamerlane by Beatrice Forbes Mance, pages 168-215. Rai Gonzalez de Clavijo, Embassy to Tamerlane, as translated and cited in Tamerlane. Sword of Islam, Conqueror of the World by Justin Marazzi, pages 312-379. The Cambridge History of Iran, Volume 6, pages 150-194.